Hi, everyone. This is Reverend Peter Desmond Kelly, and I'm expecting to have a special guest with us today uh, by the name of Brother Eulogius Sinnespark, and he's coming by way of Germany, and so it's going to be quite interesting to see how he's doing out there. I'm just waiting for him to sign on. But in the meantime, I just thought I would read something from him. He's written an ebook which is called 30 Days with Mary Magdalene. It's a month-long daily devotional ebook by Brother Eulogius. And I just find that, but first of all, the way that I met him was through my Facebook page, Hallelujah Inner Temple. And that, of course, was because he was putting all these posts, beautiful prose and illustrations. I have so many things that I want to ask him and talk about, but just to give you an idea of what I have been reading, I read his ebook. On day 20, I'm just going to read that to you. Where then is the kingdom? There is a new world of justice, peace, freedom that Jesus spoke of, that he promised. Where is it? How much injustice, unrest, enslavement has been pursued and committed in the name of gaining this utopia? Whole cities have been torched and bodies tortured and immolated to establish its gates. The misunderstanding of the kingdom has led to a disregard of the cares and concerns and rights of others, for it has been preached too long that the kingdom is out there, a place divorced from this reality that will descend from the skies and demolish this order under a physical form of jeweled walls and golden streets. But Jesus plainly said that the kingdom is within. It has always been within. Its foundation is the compassionate wisdom of the divine essence that resides at the core of us all. Its realization is in every cup of water given, every kind word, every broken heart comforted. And I just thought that I would read that first before bringing on Brother Eulogius. And what is going on here? You see, I am so much involved in doing lots of work in the area of spirituality, writing, and what have you. And then we have to deal with the technical issues. I hear you, but I don't see you. What I have here in front of me on the screen is Zoom. I was already,
okay,
I was in there.
I can see you and I can hear you.
Yeah, maybe you better do that because I'm a total, yeah. So you can see me.
I can see you and I can hear you. Everything's perfect from my end.
And I can hear you. So what I'm trying to do now, I don't know why I was put into this Zoom. Okay, let me just try to figure this out. It will come hopefully. Okay, now let's see. Now I see. Okay, there you are. Okay, so you're up there. I'm gonna. Yeah, there you go. Oh, now you're up there. So if you start talking, will you then get onto the big screen? Let's see.
Okay.
There you go. So it's working perfectly.
Yep.
That's exactly what I wanted. I mean, my God, I should be going into this tech field. So sorry, Brother Eulogius, and you have your name, Ivan Latham. So why don't we get right into your your name that you have chosen or was given to you, Eulogius Sinnespark, brother.
Yeah. Well, yeah. My birth name is Ivan Latham, and what happened was I'd been involved in I'd been ordained into one or two Buddhist orders, and as part of the ordination process, I was given various names. I've received one or two Buddhist ordination names in my time, but then my spiritual path took a turn, I won't say away from Buddhism, but sort of parallel to it, because a lot of the content of the spiritual path that I'm pursuing isn't anti-Buddhism in any way. It just took an unexpected turn, shall we say, and led me in this down the path with regards to the Magdalene and the Divine Feminine, and which was obviously a sort of side path away from Buddhism. So I stopped calling myself by my Buddhist ordinand names, and but at the same time, I don't know if I was really sort of subconsciously imagining or wishing that I had a spiritual name still that reflected the path that I was now taking. And it was actually quite by accident. It was last summer, and here in Germany, which is where I live, and about a 10-minute car journey away, there's an old convent graveyard. And it's a very nice spot. There's also, it's like a park area, and this convent graveyard is a part of this area. The whole area isn't a graveyard, but it's incorporated into this parkland. And we were there because our daughter, because I have 3 children, our daughter, she had a class sort of picnic in this park area that was adjacent to the convent graveyard. And it was a beautiful August afternoon. And while we were there, obviously, me and the family went and took a walk around the graveyard. You've got all these headstones of all the previous occupants of the old cloister that used to be on the side, and it would brother such and so, brother Pius, brother Pius, brother this, that, and the other. And I was looking along the rows of names, and I suddenly saw brother Eulogius.
Okay.
And I don't know, I just looked at the name. I don't know what it was about that name, and I looked at it, and it was a bit like when something points you in the chest, yeah? I was like, okay. And I'm thinking, brother Eulogius, that has quite a ring. Anyway, I was carried on looking around the graveyard, but it had so affected me, seeing this name, I went back to look at it again, and I thought, where's this gravestone now? And then I was looking for it, and it was just not the biggest graveyard, but obviously there's quite a few gravestones, and I wasn't quite sure where I'd seen it, but they're all pretty regimented, the gravestones were. And I think it's this row. I remember this flower at the end of the row. So I went along, and there it was, brother Eulogius. And Sinnespark, the surname, just happens to be the name of the area where the graveyard is. Okay. So we were having a picnic in the Sinnespark, which is adjacent to the cloister, the old cloister graveyard. And what I'd found, the reason I took also a spiritual name, a bit like yourself, Peter, you have various names depending on whatever avenue or whatever work you happen to be focusing on at any particular time.
Depends on which personality is manifesting.
Yeah, I sometimes feel slightly schizophrenic because I have obviously my birth name. So I have 2 Facebook profiles, and the reason I used to have one Facebook profile, and everything would go on there. So I would have all my day-to-day, the typical stuff everybody posts on Facebook, the silly memes. Can you just excuse me? My doorbell has just rung. I don't know who it is at this time of night.
Okay, yes,
I'll
don't
be back.
forget,
Just a
viewers,
second.
yes, viewers, we are actually at 3 o'clock Eastern time, where I'm from, and where Nathan is from. In Germany, it's 9 o'clock, or after 9 now. What time is it? It's, I can't see the time. But it's about a quarter after 9, I believe, where he is in the evening. So I guess he's answering. That must have been some of his family pictures there on the wall. 3 children. He just told us about how he got his name, where it came from. Fascinating story. My goodness, beautiful name. I mean, you chose well. It's got the mystery. It's got a certain medieval quality to it. You know, like it's from the past. And this particular cemetery where you got the name Eulogius, did you happen to find out the age of the tombstone?
The tombstones there basically ranged from sort of First World War period, so 19, 16, 17. I think that was the oldest that was there. And I think, as far as I remember, this brother Eulogius, the grave dated from maybe the 1920s, 1930s. I can't remember the date exactly because the name was what impacted me. But most of the graveyard there, because it's no longer a graveyard that's in use, it's there as a memorial to the people who, because that whole area now is a mental health hospital. So you have the park and the graveyard and this whole
there
area.
you go. You wondered where the schizophrenia came from.
Yeah. That explains it.
It was in the air.
It was a beautiful summer day with schizophrenia.
There you go. Wow. So tell me, how should I address you? Ivan or Eulogius? Brother Eulogius? No, brother, usually that's has a connotation with Christianity, no? How did you get to that part?
Well, yeah, it's...
you came from Buddhism?
Yeah, well, that's another thing, because my spiritual path has been more than convoluted. My life. So I'm 49 years old, and I was born into a strict fundamentalist Christian household. And when I say fundamentalist, I mean Bible literalists, 3 times church on a Sunday, church in the week, all the prayer meetings. I was given my first Bible at the age of 3, King James Version. I hadn't got a hope. Yeah, and so I was raised in this, I hesitate to use the word cult, but of latter years, that's the only way I can really describe it. And I don't want to judge every single person who's involved or belongs to those kind of churches. I know that every person is an individual. Every person has their own story, and it would be wrong of me to sit here and say all crazies when I have no what. But my experience is that it did me a lot of spiritual damage.
In what sense would you say that's happened?
Guilt. Let's start with guilt and judgment. And what I found, and it's only really in, I mean, you imagine I was 8 years of age, and I remember 8 years of age on my knees in my room, in tears, because I didn't think Jesus had forgiven me. Yeah, and I prayed, the typical sinner's prayer: Jesus, forgive me, come into my heart, all that. And I don't know what I was expecting. I'm 8. I expected maybe trumpets, angels. I don't know what I expected. Of course, you say the prayer, amen, silence. And I'm thinking, oh no. And I didn't feel any different, And and then of course you have the whole, the guilt and the judgment. It's a bit, it's a case of a spiritual path that justifies its own existence by constant negativity towards every other spiritual path. So, and it's not about a positive message of what they are bringing, although obviously they will wrap it up that we are bringing you the good news. It's always not the positivity about what they're speaking, is about the negativity of what everybody else is not doing or what they think they should be doing. Yeah, and so it messed me up a lot.
Yeah.
So I obviously go into my teen years, and I did the usual rebellion. Said I didn't want anything to do with it anymore. We moved house, so we were away from the church, that particular church. So it gave me a good opportunity to say, okay, no more. But the problem is, it wasn't just a case of it being in the church; it was in the home. When you've got parents who are, quite into it and heavy. I'm talking heavy. That it's their way or the highway, and basically it heaps on you, cut a long story short, it heaps on you all this burden of self-loathing. And you end up in a position where even if you decide you're not going to have anything to do with it anymore, it's a little like, it's an abusive relationship in another way, I think. And that's why I'm so against indoctrinating children for what and whatever. I'm not just talking about in anybody. I say to our children, because our eldest daughter, she's 8, and she's having religion at school, and we live in a predominantly Catholic part of Germany. Where I live, you're either Catholic or you're Lutheran, and if you're not that, you're not really anything else. It's a traditional part of Germany. It's a Catholic school that she goes to. It's a great school. But obviously she has religion. And the kids are divided up between Lutherans and Catholics. Our daughter hasn't been christened. We didn't have our daughter christened because we said religious conviction. We don't want to sort of rub a stamp her at birth and say, okay, you're an evangelical, you're a Catholic.
That's well said. Rubber stamp.
Because I think that's what a lot of people take it. They take it as a rubber stamp, because they'll say, what's your religion? Oh, I was baptized as a baby as a Catholic.
That's it. You have no choice for the rest of your life. That's who you are. Don't dream otherwise.
Yeah. It's the religious equivalent of having a barcode stamped on you. And so,
Excuse me for a minute. I'm just curious. I'm sure others are as well. Where are you exactly living? What part of Germany you said?
We're in Nordrhein-Westfalen. That's in the western part of Germany, near the city of Münster. So it's the western part. We're about 1.5 hours drive from the Dutch border here. It's very nice. It's a small market town that we live in.
And I couldn't help but notice, I guess I was being very nosy, but I couldn't help it. When you left to open the door, the camera went to the wall and it showed all the pictures. Was that your family?
That's my family pictures.
Beautiful, beautiful. Very nice.
Yeah. That's all of us there sitting in the field.
Okay. Wonderful family. Yeah. So what's beautiful about this is that had you, let's say, followed into a traditional Catholic, was that the religion? You were in the Catholic religion?
No, it was Pentecostal.
Oh, Pentecostal. Okay. So Pentecostal, they allow you to get married. But let's say you had followed through with the Pentecostal route. Was there some talk of you becoming a minister, a priest, a head of some spiritual religion of some sort?
Because when I was the thing about Christianity was a love-hate relationship.
Right.
And I say that because the system that presented me with Christianity was oppressive and damaging. But of course, as I got older, I looked outside that Pentecostal framework into other Christian traditions. So I looked at, like I read books about John Wesley and the Methodists.
Right.
I've read Billy Graham books, and the strange thing is that's why I call it a love-hate. I hated that system, but then I was still picking up the books. There was something about the teachings that appealed to me, but not the system. Yeah, so it's a little bit like hating the party, but the policy's not too bad. And so I was reading different books, getting different insights. And then, of course, not just that, I was casting my net even wider than Christianity, looking into the other monotheistic religion, obviously like Islam, Judaism. Obviously, I'd already been looking into because it was in tandem with my Christian upbringing. We talked a lot about the Jewish feasts and Sunday school and things like that. So obviously that was going hand in hand. But yeah, as I got into my teens, early 20s, there was this understanding that I would be pursuing some kind of ministry, or that's what I believed at the time too. And I went so far as to apply for a Bible college position in Scotland. And I didn't have any money. I was pretty stony broke. I was still staying, I was living at home still. I was early 20s. And I sent an application to this Bible college in Scotland. And I didn't have enough money to pay for the studies there because there's so much a semester. And it was up in Aberdeen. But you could work your way through your studies. So you could go there, work on the campus, and sort of they would then allow you to study for free. And I actually got accepted. I was sort of in the preliminary stages of acceptance. And what had happened, though, in the meantime is not too long before my parents had divorced, which obviously divorce isn't a big thing, and it's not sort of something that's celebrated in Pentecostal culture.
No, I guess not. You have your finger blocking half of the screen. Did you know that? Your finger is, there you go. Sorry. Yes, of course. So, wow. So you basically had, from the moment of birth almost, an indoctrination into religion, right?
Yeah.
And so basically throughout your teens, your younger days, your teens into your 20s, you're still following the Pentecostal route. You go to Scotland to study in a college, Bible college, still Pentecostal, or is there any?
It was a Pentecostal college, and what I was going to say is, with my parents having divorced not too long before, it turned out, although I got accepted into the college, I didn't actually go in the end, because my mother was at home with my brother, and I had the conversation with her, and there was, I suppose I wanted to go for the wrong reasons. I really, I suppose, wanted to go for freedom.
Okay, I got you. I'm sure there's a lot of people who relate to you. Yeah.
Yeah, with my mother being on her own, obviously with my brother and my dad. My dad, when I say my dad was Pentecostal, I use that term loosely. He had attended the church, but he wasn't. He went to the church, but it was my mother who was the big believer. Yeah. My dad sort of. He went, but more for my mum's sake, until they came to the point where they just weren't talking to each other anymore, and they went the way that some couples go sometimes. Anyway, I didn't go to Scotland, and stopped. But then, since that time, so for the best part 15, 20 years, my spiritual path was. I studied everything. Yeah, I was looking into. I looked into all the religions. Sometimes there was a point where I didn't really know what I believed. I was looking at all different. I looked at the Catholics. I was looking at Eastern Orthodox, but I'd never really looked outside of the Christian tradition for another spiritual path where I could practice spiritually. Yeah, I was always harnessing myself to some one or other of the Christian traditions. So Catholics, Eastern Orthodox, Methodists, and they all had something to say to me. I mean, I would read all the writings from different people. Scott Hahn, I love, and who wrote writes for the Catholics, who was a Baptist, became a Catholic, read his books avidly. But then it came to a point, it was after I got married. We were married for 10 years. And it wasn't too long after we were married. And I was sick of, when I say sick of Christianity, I meant I don't mean that in being really sick of what Christianity at its core message teaches. It's more about I was tired of being tired, of seemingly finding no place to lay my head, yeah?
Yes.
And I was thinking, this is just making me nuts. I can't believe sometimes, I can't choose not to believe because I come back and then I didn't know where I was. But I'm the kind of person who needs some kind of spiritual anchor. I can't just, some people sort of like, you go through life and maybe don't think of too many things spiritually. They sort of go to work, come home, they live their life, they're happy, but maybe perhaps they don't have too many spiritual thoughts. I was going to use the word problem. It's not a problem, it's just part of my personality, is that I need a spiritual anchor. Yeah, for me, spirituality and the everyday aren't separate. And I think that's why I've got 2 Facebook profiles, and it feels so strange where I have Ivan Latham, which is where I post basically all the day-to-day stuff, all the food pictures that everybody
mundane
else puts.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have the mundane Facebook page and what I call the supra-mundane Brother Eulogius page. But it feels schizophrenic to me because I can't slice myself in 2 like that. But anyway,
believe you me, Ivan, I totally relate. I don't know how many pages I have. And those are only the ones that are published. I have a whole bunch that I worked on a little bit, but they have not yet been published. So I understand you totally. Let me just see. So when did you start your path, your journey into Buddhism? When were you first introduced to Buddhism?
It will be in 2014. Okay. So about 6 years ago.
Relatively recent.
Relatively recent. And my wife actually brought me a book on Buddhism. It was a short book by Jack Cornfield, just called Teachings of the Buddha. So it wasn't full passages, it was just excerpts, the kind of thing you can dip into. But when I say dip into it, because I was new to Buddhism, so you come from Christianity where you have a book and it's thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not, and everything is what you see is what you get. Buddhism is what you see isn't really there. I remember I was reading the book, and of course, when you're coming from a Western Judeo-Christian tradition, being introduced to Buddhism, you might as well be. From my perspective, I thought I might as well be reading something by a Martian here. It doesn't make. I mean, I knew of Buddhism, but I didn't really know. My knowledge of Buddhism extended to the Matrix films. You know, you must not. The spoon must not bend. You must. You know, and that was it. And I was reading this book, and it took me. Sometimes I'd read a page, and I would go, "Come again," and I would read it again. No, still not got it, and read it again. But then. When I got into it, I suddenly started realizing what the book was, or what these teachings of the Buddha was telling me about the nature of reality and about you are what you think you become, and with our thoughts we make the world. And of course, that sounds utterly ridiculous when you first read it. You think, with our thoughts we make the world, rubbish. Yeah. But then the more you think on it and reflect on it, of course, you realize that my world is not the same as even your world, because it's all filtered through the lenses of our preconceptions, our bigotries, our prejudices, even if it's only momentary bigotry, and you pull yourself up and go, "Oh no, I'm doing that." It doesn't matter. It's a bit like a simulation that goes on your head and in your head. And so, and then I realised, what Alan Watts has said about without the eye, there wouldn't be any light. Yeah, and you suddenly realise that you do, on a subjective level, and every individual creates their own reality insofar as everything is filtered through our own preconceived ideas and notions, and that made sense. It was all coming together, and I thought, yeah, that I can see how that works. But then what happened is, once you've read that kind of thing, you can't unread it. You can't unremember that. So that lodged here, and that was a good lever, so to speak, that helped to break the lock of this guilt problem I'd had, and this what I carried with me from this damaging fundamentalist upbringing that I'd had. Because once you realise these things, you realise that those kind of things are built on ignorance, and then obviously then you start looking at even the people who teach these kind of things in a different way. You look at them, and on one hand they really wind you up, and the Ivan Latham part of me wants to punch the screen when I'm watching the YouTube videos. But the brother Eulogius side can then look at it and go, "No, you don't have a clue." And I don't mean that again, it sounds judgmental. I don't want to sit here and simply judge another belief system or tradition, however, whatever I may personally.
Well, you're very kind. I have trouble with that sometimes, but I think I do, and everyone out there understands that you are speaking from your perspective and how these different religious influences have affected you. And you're at a stage in your life where you're making sense of all this.
Yep.
And I think everyone has to go through that if they're going to ever get to a point of being sane.
Yeah.
I mean, when you understand that you've been brought up in a very high pressure indoctrination of one sort or another, to break free. I mean, that's what this is all about today on social media. There's so many groups talking about awakening.
Yeah. So many.
What are your thoughts on all that? There's a huge movement. I mean, when you were talking earlier, of course, I know about Buddhism. I studied it. I understand it. But when you look at a lot of the pages, and I'm not being judgmental, but God gave us the facility to think and to be able to understand things and try to make sense of them. A lot of what you're talking about in terms of Buddhism is what we see in most pages nowadays that are talking about awakening, about light workers, about empaths, about all of these new star seeders. And they're taking that, and the unfortunate thing about this is that they aren't changing the reality. They're just making a new fantasy of someone out there. The Galactic Federation, for example, is out there. People apparently are channeling, are communicating out there. Isn't that going against the whole theme of the inner temple?
Yes.
Finding
I agree.
within yourself God. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I would agree with you. That the passage you read from the ebook at the beginning, about where is the kingdom, and that the one thing that your fundamentalist Christian preacher and your average New Age light worker has in common is that they are both looking for the kingdom from out there.
Exactly.
Yeah? And whereas the kingdom's in here,
Exactly.
and it's in you, and it's not separate. That's the problem. Whilst we view it as separate, nothing will ever change. While we're sitting waiting for the Pleiadian Council to come and save us, or even Jesus to descend with the New Jerusalem.
Yeah.
It's, again, those people who believe those things may be sincere. I have no doubt. But, yeah, I have to say that the term light worker has started to grate slightly. The more there's so, like you say, there are so many, and that's not to. I know what I know when they use the term light worker, I know what they're trying to emphasize, and they're emphasizing the light. But this again brings me back to my own spiritual path currently, where it stands. You'll notice if you read the ebook, 30 Days with Mary Magdalene, there's a lot of reference.
Before you start with that, could you explain to those out there that, do you have a copy of it by any chance with you? A picture or something?
It's only as an ebook.
Online, okay.
I
so 30 Days of Mary Magdalene, correct? That's the title? Okay. And it's with your pen name or your spiritual name? Eulogius Sinnespark.
That's right.
Incredible. I read it. It's not, the thing that fascinated me about that book is that, it's very condensed. It's 30 days, it's 30 pages. But in each page, it's condensed. I mean, some writers, they will spend a whole chapter to explain one page worth of information. You put that all into one page. Every word, every sentence is meaningful, and it carries a punch. It has so much intensity in it. So when you read this book, it's the equivalent of 300 pages. It's a little bit like a zip file. You zip all that information right into a chapter where it is in one page.
Yeah.
And then, you have to read it, and these are profound words. It's beautiful. I mean, what you've done, you've married. Well, let's talk about. There's so much to talk about. I have a feeling we may be doing another segment together.
Fine, when we need to. That's fine by me.
Because we're already almost 45 minutes. We have another 15 minutes or so. But this book is a marriage, I think, of all of the different backgrounds that you had. You put all that wisdom and packed it into 30 pages. But let's try to focus. First, how did you get to Mary Magdalene in the first place?
That's what had happened is, what I had noticed is, there's one constant, there's a thread that runs through all of my spiritual journey. Right from, I'm not talking way back to my birth, although obviously there was some kind of thread going on there, no doubt. But I'm talking from my, when I started consciously looking at religion for myself, when I started to actually critically look at religion and start to do some exploration. And that one thread is a feminine spiritual figure. So in my Pentecostal fundamentalist background, nothing. It's severely patriarchal. The wives have to obey their husbands. Women are not allowed to teach. They follow Paul to the letter. Because then I started to look into Catholicism, and And I was looking, and the one figure who really attracted me in Catholicism was the Virgin Mary. And I wasn't even Catholic, and I remember I went into it was a Christian bookstore, and I bought myself a rosary. I was so in love with the Virgin Mary, it was unbelievable. And I brought a small booklet. I had no idea how to pray the rosary. I bought the rosary, bought the booklet for sort of like together about £5 or so, cheap plastic rosary, small booklet. Went to, I felt so, I was like Adam having bitten from that tree. When I went home, I was still living with my mother, and I was sneaking this rosary in, and I started to I prayed the rosary, and I had this for the first time, a sense of connection. Yeah. But of course, Mary has sort of been taken by the church and made to do the church's bidding. So even though she is a beautiful figure, I still think the Virgin Mary she was sort of the one, I believe, who set me on the path towards the Magdalene and the Divine Feminine and so on. Yeah, so the Virgin Mary is wrapped up with Catholicism and a patriarchal system. Then I went into Buddhism. I'm looking at the Buddhism. Buddhism is, again, most of the Buddhas are guys. You know, if you read the list of Buddhas, it's men. It tends to be men. Well, of course, then one leaps out, Tara. Yeah, the Buddha, the Tara Buddha, the girl Buddha, as my daughter calls her. And there's a famous Buddhist sort of almost a hymn, the 21 Praises of Tara, it's called. And you can find a translation of it, you can find it on YouTube, and it's beautiful. And again, Tara was the one who was even attracting me within Buddhism. I found myself saying, Om Tare, Tu Tare, Ture Soha. That is a mantra that you say to Tara. And again, there was this feminine spiritual presence. And then, of course, when I started looking into biblical tradition, I realized that the Shekinah, or the Holy Spirit, has also got feminine connotations. Yeah, and when the dove, for example, descended on Jesus at his baptism, the dove was traditionally associated with the old female goddesses of Canaan, so like Ashtaroth. And so even assuming that dove figure, there's a sort of a feminine. And then I believe I wrote on, you commented on in the last couple of days on one of my posts, and I think I wrote there something that stuck with me too, about in the first portion of Genesis, where it says this, darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved on the face of the waters. Yeah? And I've always viewed that, and I think a lot of people do. Okay, you've got the clash there between chaos and the Spirit. Yeah, darkness versus the Spirit. But Hebrew literature, especially in the Psalms, it uses something called double emphasis. Certainly in so it will repeat something in another way to emphasize a point.
Sure.
And so if you read that line through the lens of this literary tradition that they have, this double emphasis. So darkness moved upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was on the face of the waters. Yeah, so you got those two lines together. And I'm looking at those thinking, yeah, who actually gives birth? Who is it who actually does birth in our realm? It's not the guys. And I'm thinking, the Spirit of God hovers on the water, and what happens? The Spirit of God manifests light. Without the darkness, the light isn't there. It's the old, it's the womb. Yeah.
So you need both. If I could just interrupt you for a moment. You mention Sophia a lot in your book, and at first I was wondering, where's that coming from? And then of course there's the goddess Sophia, right? The old and so you brought in that darkness into the book Magdalene, Mary Magdalene. right?
Yeah. Sophia.
How did you bring that? Because this is beautiful. I love it because this is certainly where I have been for some time now, and the idea is that we have to look at a integration of positive and negative, light
Absolutely.
and darkness. The difficulty that the Judeo-Christian tradition has had is that they've tried to say no, no, no to the darkness and only embrace the lightness.
Yeah.
And that's what's been going on here in North America with the light workers, with gurus and the like. Only focus on the light, the law of attraction, that will bring you what you want, that will manifest what you want. And I've always had trouble with that. I've tried it and it doesn't work. Okay, so I've used some rather, uncolourly words to describe what the heck is this going on here, the law of attraction. It doesn't work. Sorry.
Well,
it doesn't make sense. First of all, if you know anything about the law of physics, opposites attract.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay? You can't tell me that suddenly, because we're dealing with emotional, heart, mind, body connection here and spirit, that the laws have changed suddenly. Only positives attract.
No, you're right.
It doesn't work.
It's positive and negatives attract.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so go on about the Sophia. How do we integrate that into Mary Magdalene?
Well, what happened is I was on my sort of my Buddhist way, and I picked up a copy of the Pistis Sophia, which is a Gnostic text, a famous Gnostic text, and I started reading it. I was just casually reading it, and I had it as an app on my phone. I'd seen it on the App Store and thought, oh, that looks interesting, Gnostic text. And I'm reading it, and I'm thinking, this sort of, it meshed so well with the Buddhist outlook on things. So it wasn't opposed to it. It was sort of like, if you can imagine Jesus being a Buddha instead of the fundamentalist Christians see him, if you see him as an enlightened being, the language in that was very similar. The concepts, the idea. So you have Sophia. The story it's a long text, and I can't really condense it into 3 words, but basically Sophia.
You probably could, though, if you did another 30 days with Sophia, maybe.
I could do that. So yeah, Sophia is down in. It talks about self-will, and Sophia is wisdom. She is wisdom, and what she's done is she has descended into these lower realms, following a light that she believed was the true light, what they call the pleroma, the ultimate, the source. But she's been deceived, and she's followed this false light down to this lower eon, as they call it. There are 13 eons between us and the pleroma, the source. They can also be explained in terms of different psychological states of mind. But basically, for the benefit of the story, Sophia is then trapped in this earthly realm. So wisdom is trapped, having been deceived by self-will. So ego has trapped wisdom down here in this material realm, and she's crying out, "Save me, save me, save me!" And then her partner, who was the Christ, eventually comes down and through his teachings, he liberates Sophia. And one enduring image I have in my mind, I read this many, many, many years ago before I got into any of this kind of thing. I read a book called, I think it's called The Black Sophia, Goddess of Wisdom. This was many years ago. So the seeds for this were planted back in my 20s, I think. So I read the book back then. It was called Sophia, Goddess of Wisdom by Caitlin Matthews. She's a British writer, and it's a great book if you can get hold of that too. And she describes how the temple tears in two, the veil of the temple tears in two when Christ dies and the earthquake. And I remember, I'm sure it was her who said, the temple, the veil tears, and Sophia is free. And so wisdom is then free to roam the world again. This story, of course, is basically a story about how we can ascend from our ignorant state to ultimate
and it
knowledge.
also brings to mind the Garden of Eden.
Yeah, it's yes, there's a lot of language in there that is, it mirrors that Garden of Eden sort of narrative too. And of course, then Sophia is liberated from self-will. And I read the Pistis Sophia, and then I was thinking, so then you got this figure of Mary Magdalene, who's then in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, in the Gnostic Gospels, she dares to come to Jesus. She's not this little woman hiding there going, yes, sir, please, sir, is that okay, sir? She comes directly to him and says, what does this mean? What is sin? What is this, that, and the other? And she's telling the disciples turn around and basically say, why would he be talking to you and not us? Yeah, and she's saying, do you think I'm lying? And so you have this very strong female spiritual authority. And I suddenly realized, Magdalene, you're the person I've been looking for all my life. I was reading it and I'm thinking, she isn't a Virgin Mary, because the church didn't want anything to do with Mary Magdalene. They blackened her name. She was a harlot. They've sort of, Pope Gregory the Great told his famous story in the 6th century, turned her into the prostitute that was nearly stoned, and the mud has stuck. And so Mary has sort of been shoved out into the wilderness. The Virgin Mary, as much as I admire the figure of the Virgin Mary, I still think she's a beautiful image of divine femininity. However, the church has taken her and made her serve their will, a little like they took Sophia and tried to make heavenly wisdom serve self-will. She's too, for me, I don't mean this, she comes with too much baggage, the Virgin Mary. There's too much, she's sort of been taken and spoiled. They've almost spoiled her image, the church. Yeah. But in Mary Magdalene...
Well, they're pretty good at spoiling and destroying messages.
Yeah, exactly. And because it's a very patriarchal system, so the women really have to be kept low. It's like they'll tolerate the Virgin Mary, but even she can only go so far.
Exactly.
Yeah, but then in the Mary Magdalene, then obviously I started looking deeper and deeper into it. I suddenly realized, I have this fusion then. The teachings I'd seen in Buddhism were still relevant. That isn't the case that I've stopped that concept, those ideas, those ignorance, those three poisons that Buddhism speaks of, delusion, ignorance, and anger, and the way that we do forge our own reality, totally relevant. That's sort of ingrained into me now. I can't look at something without then thinking, well, the way I'm seeing it isn't the way as the guy in the street is seeing it. So I still keep doing that. But then I suddenly realized, but in this figure of Magdalene, I'm seeing Sophia, I'm seeing the wisdom, and for me, I have to also just add this quickly. I don't know how much time we have. I have to add this quickly. A lot of people make a big thing of, were Jesus and Mary Magdalene married? And they make a big deal of this lineage, supposedly, this physical lineage. Yeah, so Da Vinci Code stuff. Yeah? That isn't what it's about for me. All fair play to those who want to study that. But again, like you, I've seen so many Facebook groups devoted to, this is the lineage and it came down through the Franks and the Merovingian kings and we can trace it to that. That isn't what it's about. You're missing the point. It isn't about a physical lineage. This is about a spiritual realization.
So important what you've just said there. It's so important.
Because if you've just
Yeah.
because if all that you do is if you start focusing just on the physical marriage
Yeah.
and any offspring they produce, which I'm not against, maybe they did, I don't know, but when you're focusing on the wrong end of the stick.
Yeah.
The point is that in Mary Magdalene you have the Sophia wisdom to the Christ light. Yeah, you have the darkness to the light. You have the wisdom to the love, and either without the other doesn't make any sense. I think I also wrote. I've also written. I think it's in the 30 Days with 30 Days book. I'm not sure. Wisdom. Wisdom without love is ignorant, and love without wisdom is blind.
So I believe it is in your book. Yes, I think that rings a bell.
And again, darkness and light. It's those. What do they do? They complement each other. They're complementary and essential to each other. And that's what these Gnostic texts, you always get Mary. She's the one who tells the disciples what Jesus has said. The disciples sitting there scratching their heads going, I haven't got a clue. A bit like when I read that Buddhist book for the first time, what the heck's he talking about? Mary comes along and goes, it was this, it was this, it was this. Mary's always presented as the interpreter of the teachings. And I think there's a reason for that. It's there to basically show us that it's a complementary, it's a fusion, it's a marriage, it's a sacred marriage.
A balance. And it balances the negative and positive, right? I mean, you bring the light, the darkness, and the light is emphasized. The information is emphasized against the darkness. It's wonderful. This concept, I'm telling you, we don't have time to talk about that today, but as you may know, I come from a background of psychology, so I've done a lot of research and work in looking at various cultures, including the Eastern Buddhist concept, the yin and the yang, and taking that and bringing the two together. And so it's incredible that I see the parallel as you're speaking in the religious background and the spiritual research that you've done and the insights that you've gained. And I see the parallel to these same concepts. So to me, that is a confirmation that these ideas are valid, and the Hallelujah Inner Temple is certainly embracing everything that you're talking about. It's wonderful. We've kind of run out of time here, but before we finish, how can folks get a hold of your ebook?
It's available as a PDF file. So if people want to, you can get in touch with me on Facebook at Brother Eulogius. I have a page.
Okay.
I have a page, Brother Eulogius, and I also have a page. It's not a page; it's another profile called Eulogius Sinnespark. Yeah. If you put Brother Eulogius and search under pages, you should find me there. Okay. You can then send me a message, and I can send it free of charge.
Okay, so this is free of charge.
This is free.
That's great.
I have a website too called voiceofthemagdalene.org.
Okay.
And the book is also on there under the menu tab, and the email address is there that you can write to request a copy of the book.
Wonderful.
Basically, I don't really like charging for the stuff I do. I mean, obviously,
I'm just curious, how do you make a living?
Well, at the minute, I used to work full time up until last September, in a normal job, day job. I was a supervisor, a manager for a cleaning company here in Germany.
Okay.
But then my wife, she's a trained in the German Finanzamt, so she works in finance. My wife, but since 2015, she was on maternity leave because our second and our third children came very close together. Yeah, so she was still on maternity leave with our second child when she found out she was pregnant with our third child. Between 2015 and the end of last year, she'd been on maternity leave for 4 years. Yeah? Our third child went into kindergarten, and my wife said, when Matilda, that's our third child, when Matilda goes into kindergarten, I'm looking for a job. I want to get out into the normal world again and have something more than just kids TV. Yeah, because our kids are all mad on all the usual. I think we've watched 1 million times over their favourite shows. Anyway, my contract at my workplace was coming up for renewal around about the same time. But obviously, we have 3 kids. One's in school, 2 in kindergarten. The hours here that they're in, and currently with the lockdown, it's even more complicated. But my wife got offered this great opportunity for a finance firm in nearby Munster. But of course, we had the problem. I was working full time. We couldn't both work full time because then I was sometimes doing 15-hour days with this job. I was going out at 5 in the morning and coming in at 8 in the evening. And saying, well, how can we work this out? And so I said, well, my contract's coming up for renewal. This is a great opportunity for you. Perhaps we just switch. You know, my wife said, would you mind switching? So I said, okay, yeah. Naively thinking that a stay-at-home dad can be, will have more time on his hands, mate.
Well, that's great. I mean, and you know, the incredible thing about this is there's certainly a synchronicity, isn't there? I mean, as you take on a more traditional feminine role, you're also writing about Mary Magdalene.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
That's why something has stuck to me. I wrote down a few weeks ago. I wrote down sometimes the real miracle is the synchronicity, and because I found out so often, so many times, things have been very, very timely in how they've worked out. So,
well, Ivan, it has been absolutely wonderful talking with you. The wisdom, the information. There's so much coming from you. It is just so uplifting to hear you speak.
It's a privilege to be able to talk about it. To be honest, it's what the biggest encouragement for me is always when what I do. If it's only one person, if I get one comment on something that will say, "Oh, thanks for sharing this," then that lifts my day. I think, okay, that was worthwhile.
So I'll be putting all of your links beneath this video once I get this uploaded onto my various platforms. And I'm telling you, I will be speaking with you again. We're going to be having.
I hope so.
I would love if we could have regular kind of discourse. You know, these types of things. I'll be putting them on my Hallelujah, my hit page, as I like to call it.
Yeah.
And because it is so much in line with what Hallelujah Inner Temple is all about. So I send you my love. God bless you, and we'll be in touch very soon.
I hope so. It's been a privilege. Thank you.